If you listen to what is said in the European countries, the perception is very bad. 75%, for example, French people are associating Islam with violence. The perception is that Islam is a problem and that Muslims are creating problems. They are not really perceived at home in Europe. Every single European society has its own debates, its own controversies around the Muslim presence. The first one is the way Europe is defining itself. The current discourse and the general discourse is that Muslims are not European citizens. We have millions of Muslims that are already Europeans. And this is the situation when we speak about Turkey, for example. It's as if we are speaking about people who are coming from outside, not acknowledging the fact that we already have Europeans that are Muslims in our country. Not only this, on the geographical dimension, it's as if when we speak about Europe, we speak about Western Europe. Eastern Europe is not there. The Muslims who are being Europeans for generations and centuries are not perceived as Europeans. The Bosnian people are.
Hey Veracity, welcome back to the channel. It's a girl VeraMoore, and I'm back with another reaction video. Today I'm going to be reacting to Douglas Murray Archive, and we have Europe is failing its Muslims. Let's go on.
Not Europeans. It's as if because they are Muslims, there are less Europeans. Our politicians very often they speak about their fellow citizens as if they don't know who are these new citizens who are Muslim and they are living with them. It's as if these new citizens are problematic because of their religion but not citizens as to their status. And this is where we have this confusion. We speak about cultural and we Islamize the socio-economic problems. Muslims in our societies are facing unemployment, discrimination and racism, and it's not because they are Muslims, it's because they are facing class discrimination, segregation, and wrong social policies. At the cultural level, it's as if the new visibility of the Muslims is just showing that they don't want to integrate. In fact, it's exactly the opposite. The opposite, they are visible. Millions are visible. It means that they are at home. So when you have mosques, when you have organizations, it's not because you don't want to integrate. It's exactly the opposite. You feel at home, you build your mosque, and even this, it's also a very important point in the reality. So it's the opposite. When it comes to food, curry, and couscous, that's fine. When it comes to money, Islamic banking, that's fine. But when it comes to dresses, when it comes to color, when it comes to something which is different, it's not fine. So we are selective in our integration. Money and food, welcome. Colors and dresses, no. So, last point, when it comes to the media, it's as if here we are only dealing with problems and we are dealing with these controversies every day. We are talking about violence, the minarets, the headscarves, all the problems, not talking about what is done at the grassroots level, the positive actions of the Muslims, the presence. Millions are silent and are constructive and contributing to the reality of our country. And let me say something which is important. The Muslims are understanding the West and Europe much better than before. They are understanding and rediscovering their religion much better than before. And I would say, yes, I'm supporting this motion because today we are failing, but it's a question of time, because what I see at the grassroots level is much more positive than what is happening today in our political discourse, media coverage. Things are very important behind. This is what I call the silent revolution, but we need time and it will be coming. Thank you.
Well, a very passionate and fluent opening there to our debate. Against the motion is Douglas Murray. He is the director of the Centre for Social Cohesion here in Britain, which tries to promote integration between Britain's ethnic minorities and the wider population, and it specialises in radicalisation. So, Douglas Murray, your time starts now.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Tariq says that Europeans associate Islam with violence. There is some truth in that. Wow. There is also a very obvious reason for that, which is that Islam is associated with violence. It was not Buddhists who flew planes into the Twin Towers. It was not Hindus or Jews that blew up the London Underground and buses a few years ago. And that simple fact has to be acknowledged if you're even going to start a dialogue. Now, what is happening, ladies and gentlemen, it's not a pantomime. I'd argue that Europe has done not too badly, considering the circumstances. In the middle of the last century, there was an almost negligible Muslim presence in Europe. At the turn of the 21st, in Western Europe alone, there were 15 to 17 million Muslims. That's a very fast migration, ladies and gentlemen, one of the fastest in human history. And no society would find it easy to deal with that kind of migration. As it happens, European societies, Western European societies have, I think, dealt with this much better than some would. Certainly, Muslims coming to live in Britain and in Western Europe enjoy more rights and better rights, among them freedom of worship, than they do in any Islamic country in the earth here today. We do have a problem. We have a problem when the failures of Islam throughout the world, the failures of all Islamic societies, come here into Britain. Their intolerance of freedom of conscience, their intolerance of apostates, their intolerance of freedom of expression and freedom of speech, their intolerance of minorities, other religious minorities, sexual minorities, their intolerance of gays, their dislike and distrust of half of the population, women, and many, many other things. And the call, what's more, for a parallel legal system within Britain and European societies. This is monstrous. No other group behaves like this, asks for parallel laws. This is a fundamental problem, and it's one we're going to have to deal with. It's a problem between a society, Western Europe, that believes that laws are based on reason, and Islam that believes that they are based on revelation. Between these two ideas, I'm not sure there is very much compromise for Europe. It is not Europe that has let down its Muslims, but the Muslims of Europe that have let down Europe. This is not solely something which we have to say we can never reconcile. Of course we can reconcile this, but we need to be honest about it. We need to be frank about it, and we cannot avoid things just because they are unpleasant. And if there were one thing I would wish Muslims in Europe could learn today, as fast as possible, it would be this: that you have no right in this society not to be offended. You have no right to say that because you don't like something you can commit violence, or you would like something to be stopped or censored. You have no right to have more hate laws or hate crime laws or hate speech laws just to defend Islam. You have to realize, the Muslims of Europe have to realize, that a society in which even your deepest feelings can be trodden upon is the only society worth living in. And the sooner we can learn that, the sooner that Islam can learn that within Europe, the better. It is not Europe that has failed its Muslims. It is Islam that has failed Europe. I'd argue Islam has failed its Muslims. Thank you.
Well, you certainly stirred things up a bit there, didn't you, Douglas Murray? Thank you very much indeed. OK, well, let me invite some comments from the floor, and let's go to the lady there. Yeah.
I just had a question to a few questions to Mr. Murray. I don't think it's the Muslims of Europe that have failed, the Muslims of Europe that have failed Europe. I think it's exactly the opposite. One of the things you said, it was actually a few Muslims, crazy Muslims, I think, who sort of flew the plane into those buildings. But was Hitler a Muslim by any chance? Because I'm not sure that Muslims had anything to do with the Holocaust.
OK. Gentleman there.
In 2009, the Centre for Muslim Studies, along with the Gallup poll, interviewed 500 British Muslims.
Oh my God, this is crazy.
99.5% of those British Muslims found homosexual acts unacceptable. What was interesting is that the government has given concession to Muslims as well as other religious organisations. So it seems to me, in fact, this government here is prepared to give religious organisations, including Muslims, the rights over lots of gay men and women.
You talked about how Europe has dealt with this problem, and what you basically have alluded to in the 6 minutes that you had are that Muslims are a problem. And you're from the organisation called the Centre for Social Cohesion, and it's worrying that to have you talk about these things in this manner. What you are basically alluding to is that Muslims are external to Europe, and it's worrying that you see it that way, because then that means there is no chance of there being any solution to any problem, or Muslims being seen as a part of Europe and being seen as European citizens. Thank you.
Gentleman there.
I just want to pick up something that Douglas Murray said. I'd like to ask you, when you talk about the Muslims that are the problem, which Muslims are you talking about? Because you keep slipping in your language to focus on the radicals, the extremists.
Okay, right.
Maybe that's because that's what you're interested in. But there's another whole set of Muslims out there who are not like that.
Okay, just a quick clutch there. Yeah.
It is sufficient to point out that Europe is not failing its Muslims, that this debate is taking place tonight and is being televised by the BBC World Service, that Tariq Ramadan holds a chair at Oxford University. I put it to you because of these very facts, that you are being welcomed, that you are being integrated, that you are being respected. You are not a problem.
Okay, let's just take... There'll be another opportunity after we've heard our next two speakers to take more questions from the floor. Thank you. Now, arguing for the motion is Petra Steenen. She's a former Dutch diplomat who has worked in the Arab world, and indeed she's written about her experiences there. She's a very active human rights campaigner with a particular interest, amongst other things, in women's rights. So, Petra Steenen, the floor is yours.
Some people feel that in my country, Islamization has already succeeded. I think the question tonight is whether we in Europe are actually capable of looking beyond the color of religion. I was in Egypt during the 90s. Egypt has known about terrorism attacks long before 9/11, 7/7, or the murder of Theo van Gogh in the Netherlands. They suffered big time. And yes, there were a lot of things which I was critical of when I lived in the Arab world. Reading the Arab Human Development Reports, they sum it up very precisely. There is still a lack of freedom, there's a lack of knowledge, and the lack of participation of women is really worrying in those societies. The question, though, is, are those wrongs really connected to Islam? My friends like Douglas would say, yes, it is. A lot of my friends in the Netherlands say so as well. And they warn me not to be naive. They say that the danger now is among us, like an Islamic Trojan horse. I wonder, though, and this would be a question for me to Douglas, what do we do with the people who don't want to adhere to your ideas of enlightenment? Do we send them away? What do we do? Do we re-educate them? So I'm wondering, are we actually addicted to our own stereotypes? Over and over again, we hear the same warning. We're sleeping, Europe will turn into a certain Eurabia, Islam is about to take over. I believe that this one-sided, one-dimensional story is really failing Muslims in Europe miserably. I'm a regular speaker at in the Netherlands about Islam, about my experiences in the Arab world, and I sense a genuine curiosity among the general people in the Netherlands not to believe what Geert Wilders says about Islam, not to believe what Douglas Murray just said about Islam. They want to know the other story. And yes, you've all heard about Ayaan Hirsi Ali, I'm sure. And yes, she was a pioneer. But the other people, Ahmed Abu Talib, the Barack Obama of the Netherlands, the mayor in Rotterdam, Famile Arslan, a female lawyer wearing a headscarf, she got on the front cover of Time magazine. And my best example would be Ibrahim Afellay. He's a soccer player, and I wish he would score the winning goal at the World Championship. I'm sure that he will be 100% one of us. I am inspired by people who dare to dream. And I believe that we would definitely fail Muslims in Europe, but even, not only Muslims, every single citizen in Europe, if we continue to judge people on the basis of the color of their skin, the color of religion, and not by the stature of their character. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Petra Steenen. Now, our final speaker, arguing against the motion, is Flemming Rose, the Danish journalist. He's the opinion and culture editor of Jyllands-Posten, which is Denmark's biggest newspaper, and it was he, of course, who commissioned those very controversial cartoons of the Prophet Muhammad back in 2005 that sparked protests amongst Muslims right across the world. I see you're in the launch pad, Flemming Rose. Your time starts now.
In fact, I'm not going to talk about cartoons tonight. I've done that for the past 5 years, and I'm a little bit fed up with it. But I'm going to share with you my afterthoughts after having lived that experience 5 years ago and still experiencing the afterwaves of what happened.
Oh my god, guys, this video is so long. It's about 15 minutes. I wish we could keep going on and on about this whole Muslim thing. Douglas Moore said it all. Muslim actually supports violence. Muslim supports violence if things are not going the way it should. Even though halfway into the Quran, it states that a man can beat his wife if she transgresses. Can you just imagine that? But I definitely enjoyed watching this. It is not Europe that has failed its Muslim, but the Muslims of Europe, they failed Europe. Because look at that large amount of Muslim immigrants trooping into Europe. What are they coming there for? And now there'll be no jobs, no food to eat, the sufferings and all. The Muslims, they have their own country. Now the Muslims in Europe, they're trying to change the system. They want to wear their hijab. They are even saying nobody should smoke, nobody should drink because it's against their culture. Who cares about your culture? This is Europe, this isn't Iraq or Iran. There are Muslim countries where they could have gone to and lived their lives there. So why come to Europe? It is definitely the Muslims of Europe who has failed Europe. 100% agree with Douglas Moore. What are your thoughts on this? What do you guys think about this video? Drop a comment down below. If you enjoyed this video, give it a huge thumbs up and please share this video. And if you're new to the channel, join Veracity. Hit the subscribe button below, turn on the post notification bell so that you can always be the first person to know whenever a new video drops. And that's guys, see you in my next video. Bye guys.